Hello and welcome into this week's version of Mountaineer Mafia. Before we get into the game this week, I'd like to rehash kind of what we went over with Miami this past weekend. Wasn't the end score we wanted or the end result, but I think overall for the town it was pretty successful. For the school, it was pretty much successful, and there was a lot of people, and I didn't really hear many complaints. A little trash talking both ways, as typically goes, but overall, I think most people came out having a good time, even with the loss. I think it was about as good of a time as I've had at a loss all season, just because the atmosphere was so good. And that says a lot coming from a noon game, which is a lot earlier than we're typically used to. And, had it been a night game, I think it might have been multiplied just a little bit more. And maybe people would have hung around a little longer, but you can't really blame them with the score and the heat the way it was. So I think the town and the school really pulled it off well. And just to rehash a little bit from the game, Cox went out with the injury after that long touchdown run that was pulled back, unfortunately. Hopefully he can go this weekend. We'll see. And Miami seemed to run that bubble screen all day long and have success with it, which is a little disappointing because it seems like we never adjusted to it. They ran it pretty much the same way every time, too, and mostly to the same side of the field, although they did switch over a little bit. So it's a little disappointing to see that we couldn't do a little better defensively to adjust to that. They also ran that hurry up that I had talked about last week previously. They ran it more than I thought they would, but they were very successful at that. We weren't prepared, just like when Arkansas State ran it on us last year. We looked a little silly a couple times with getting the subs off late. So hopefully we can clean that up and get used to these teams that will probably be trying to do that on us more often, seeing how well it worked as Miami did it. And I personally think we're seeing the fact that Rubino wasn't allowed to kick enough early in the season now. He has the kick at the end of the half that could have put us, a little closer in the game. I don't know if it would have changed the game drastically, but, it gives us a little something to pump ourselves up going into halftime, and he misses the kick. So, I still think he should have kicked a little bit more to start the season out with and just let him kick a couple more times in that ODU game. And just get him as many kicks as possible so that kind of thing can stop happening here in the future. But moving on to this week's game, we'll be playing in the state of Ohio for the first time ever, which had me a little dumbfounded. I did not know that we had not played there previously. Just thinking back, I knew we had played Youngstown State many years ago in the playoffs, and obviously last year against Ohio, which was obviously a neutral site game for the bowl game, but I didn't really know that in the long history of app football that we had never played in the state of Ohio. So that's kind of interesting tidbit, and I think that's pretty cool. But the game this weekend is 3:30 right here. You can see the city of Akron there in the background. And to be honest, their stadium looks quite a bit like ours. It's kind of more built up on the one side here than the other. And they have a Grass Hills section over here. And then they kind of have like a smaller field house as well down here with the scoreboard on that end. So, out of the confines of home, but, the stadium is built pretty similarly as far as most stadiums go. So, hopefully the guys feel kind of at home there too, just as the setting is not crazy different from what they're used to. So that could play into our favor just a little bit, as not going to be a big factor, but something that might help a little bit. And then obviously we are playing the Akron Zips. Their mascot is kangaroo. It is one of the few female mascots in the NCAA, which I did not know previously going into this, but I guess it's considered a female kangaroo. And they go by the Zips for short. And just, I think, the only school ever to go by that name. So pretty cool for them to have that name. I do think that this is exactly the type of game we need. They're a quality opponent. They're from a peer conference. And it's on the road. I think after this past weekend, we need to get away from home. Just give us something to just clear the slate and essentially start over. Look at this almost more as the first conference game, even though it's not. But kind of look at this game more in that fashion than to say, it's another big road game. Let's go in there business-like more than we did against Miami. I think Miami was a little built up, a little different atmosphere, and I think the players felt that. And I don't think that affected the fact that we lost, but I think it affected, maybe how they prepped for the game beforehand and just changed things just a little bit, just enough. Let's go back in there with that Tennessee mentality and kind of treat it more business-like. It feels like that game went so well because these guys treated it more like a business destination to get the job done more than to go in there and worry about all the outside stuff. So hopefully they can get back into that and bring back that fire that we had, what it looked like we had against Tennessee. So hopefully we can get back rolling. These guys lost a lot of starters from last season. They did have a really good season last year. I believe they went 8-5, ended up in a bowl game. They played Utah State in that bowl game, and they did go on to beat them. So there's no joke there. Utah State's usually pretty talented, coming from the other side of the United States there, but usually has a very consistent team, if nothing else. Not a world beater every time, but very consistent winning program over there. And these guys lost to Ohio last year 14-12. Again, different season, but just to give us a little look about comparatively from last season to this season, we both had close games with Ohio. So take that for what it's worth. Again, not so much to do with this season, but if you kind of want to look at the bigger picture, what we could maybe expect out of this. Last week they played Marshall. They went down 21-7 early in the game, and they ended up beating them 65-38. So it just became a massive shootout, lots of passing. They do like the deep ball quite a bit. If they can get it, they're going to try and throw it. So we need to be careful of that defensively. I don't think we're going to see a score like that this week. I'm hoping that our defensive pressure can be stronger than what Marshall brought against them, and we can get to the quarterback and make him make some bad decisions, some bad throws, get a couple sacks in there. I think we can do that a little bit better than Marshall can, and so hopefully, our score doesn't look anything like the one they had against them. They run kind of out of the shotgun formation all the time, and it's almost occasionally in the pistol offense. It's kind of a weird mix. Sometimes they look a lot like they're in the pistol, and then sometimes they're spread 5 wide with the shotgun formation there. So expect them to run an offense much similar to the one when we spread it out. But for the most part, they're much more of a passing team than we are. They do take quite a few penalties, at least building up to this game they have. So we have to take advantage of that. We can't have offsetting penalties, and we can't let them get a big pickup on third down after putting them into a long situation because of a penalty on second down. We just can't have it. So we got to take advantage of that. First up for the players to kind of keep an eye out for this one. Obviously, the quarterback's the most important position on the field. This is Thomas Woodson. And I don't know how well you can tell from the picture here, but this is a big bruising quarterback as far as you can call him, I guess. He reminds me a lot of a Byron Leftwich. For those of you who remember him, he actually played at Marshall. He wears gloves on both hands, which most quarterbacks do not. But he does decide to go gloves on both hands here. I guess that gives him what he feels a better grip on the ball. He doesn't seem to be extremely great passer. His mechanics, to me personally, they look very awkward for a guy that would be playing quarterback at the next level. But he's definitely got the size to take off and the physicalness to throw his shoulder into a hit. So he will not be afraid to carry the ball. And you can see it here. He's running with the ball here, and this happens to be against the bowl game against Utah State. So he won't be afraid to carry the ball for some first down. So we have to be careful. He will be much more mobile than Dobbs and Kaya that we've seen so far this year. He's probably a little bit closer to what we saw from the quarterback against ODU. But I would say he's a better runner than that. So we got to keep an eye out for him, hopefully force him into mistakes, some bad decisions, and take advantage of those. Next up, Jerome Lane, wide receiver, is going to be wearing number 7. And this guy kind of eerily reminds me of Sean Price. I mean, he kind of even looks like him a little bit in the face to me. He's got the dreads sticking out of the back of the helmet there. So he also has that similarity as well. He is a big wide receiver. He's not going to be easily brought down, and he's very tall. That's the other reason I think he reminds me of Sean Price. And our smaller defensive backs, he's just going to pick on him all day, to be totally honest. He's probably going to jump for the ball and be able to get it just about every time. We just need to be sticking him at the line as best we can and just cause this guy to be frustrated all day, because he also seems like the type that might take a play or two off if he's not getting the ball or he's getting frustrated. So we need to get into his head as much as we can, and hopefully that can help us defensively. Moving over to the other side of the ball. Well, this is Marcus Cox here, but we'll go ahead and talk about the defensive front seven for them last year being considered their strongest point. This year they lost a lot of those guys, but their front four, from what I saw on film, looked to be pretty stout. They're really good at stopping the run right up the gut, which is seemingly our favorite play this season, and for the last season too, probably. But what we need to do is try and bounce that play outside as much as possible, because we'll get some yardage up the middle because of our offensive blocking, but for the most part, they're pretty good about shutting that down and limiting the yards on the runs up the middle. So if we can get Marcus, if he plays, get outside, we'll have a little bit more success. And hopefully we can throw some quick slants, little bubble screens, maybe use some plays out of Miami's playbook to help Lamb and his receivers get going, because I think we're going to need that in this game. So we'll go ahead and move on to Marcus now, since he's been sitting here waiting patiently. We really need this guy to play, in my opinion. Jalen Moore did well once he really got going and into a rhythm last week, especially against a pretty stout defense of Miami. But the problem was he did take a couple plays to get used to it, and previously this season he hadn't had a whole lot of success. So it worries me a little bit. I mean, I think he can get going in this game and bring the rhythm back up, so I'm not crazy worried, but I really want to see this guy on Saturday. The only thing I would say is, if he's going to be a little bit healthier for conference play to keep him out, then maybe we take a chance and let Jalen get in there and do his thing. We need Taylor to have his coming out party. We can't have this anymore. We really got to open this offense up a little bit more. We need to see more throwing. We need to see more reps with these wideouts, especially before conference play starts. And this type of play, these types of throws, this type of importance from Taylor is really going to become more important if Marcus Cox does not play in this game. We're going to be needing to take advantage of other ways to get the ball down the field. So we really need that to happen. And then I love this guy. I love the way he plays. I love his speed. We need Hopkins to really get going, and not just him, but all the wide receivers. We need to get off the blocks better and get open for Taylor, because I think part of the problem with him taking sacks and holding on to the ball too long is just not seeing anybody open. I'm not seeing anybody open fast enough. So we need to get those guys to work a little bit harder to get open and make those catches that we've had a couple drop balls on what should be sure catches. We got to have that change. And hopefully it starts this week, right before we get into conference play. Get these guys gelling, get their confidence up, and take a lot of reps, good reps, getting into the conference slate here, and be ready for Black Saturday next weekend at home. I would say overall that we can come away with a victory this Saturday, but I will say that I'm also concerned about this game. If it becomes a shootout, I'm going to be very nervous. I don't know if we have the quick strike offense that we used to have in the Armonte Edwards years, so it would concern me if we go down early, and I hope that doesn't happen. I hope our defense can keep them limited as much as possible, but we'll see. And I'm hoping our offense opens up the playbook a little bit more, and we get some plays that we haven't seen. If you remember last year at Georgia State, threw a deep long ball to start the game. We did the same thing against ODU. I'd love to see a little bit more of that. Maybe a couple runs up the middle to set that kind of a play up, a couple short yardage things, and then catch them off guard. I don't know exactly what we're going to see. Like I said, I hope it's a more mix of the playbook, but I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to see App play football again. So go Apps. I think we're ready for this weekend.